One of the problems with feedback is there's always going to be the moment where you're like, that bruises my ego. That does not feel good. And you have to say, okay, you know what? Let's just take the ego out of it. If I listen to this feedback, it just means that I will be better. And I'm just going to roll with that.
Welcome to the Shift Your Day Job podcast. I'm Brittany Cates, career coach and fellow career shifter, here to help you leave unfulfilling work behind. Every Thursday, I share stories, strategies, and confidence-boosting insights to help you gain clarity, take action, and create a career you love. Let's shift your day job together. Most career changes start with a single question. What if something better is possible? For today's guest, Francie Jain, that question didn't just spark a career pivot, it led to an entirely new way of thinking about professional development. After years of matchmaking hedge funds with investors and raising nearly $500 million in institutional capital, Francie saw a massive gap. Individuals at career crossroads weren't getting the structured, affordable support they needed. That realization led to her creation of TerraWatt, a company that helps businesses invest in their employees' growth without breaking the bank. It's a game changer in making coaching accessible. By using group purchasing power, Francie's model connects top-tier coaches with companies looking to strengthen their teams without the hefty price tag of traditional corporate training. In this episode, Francie shares her unconventional career path, the pivotal moment that led her to reimagine her career development, and why investing in people creates a ripple effect in every community. So please join me in welcoming Francie to the podcast. Hi, Francie. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I'm so interested to hear about your journey to this company that you have today. I know you've had even 2 previous companies that you've created before this. I would love for you to share with the audience that journey that kind of got you to this
Sure.
entrepreneurial place. Yeah.
I think like the beginning of the story is just that one of my strengths is a matchmaker. And I didn't really realize that probably until I was in business school and I did a Myers-Briggs personality test.
Yeah.
And I was an off the charts extrovert, which was a big surprise because I'm not a person that will walk into a crowded party and shake everyone's hand. But what that meant to me is I'm really driven by relationships. What I wanted to do post business school was work in finance and help explain complex strategies. And that was a great success for me for a while. And I loved it. But I kept thinking, I'd love to do something for myself where one of the troubles with being a salesperson or matchmaker is it's hard sometimes to track who should get the credit for something. And I felt like I was done with trying to claim credit for everything because sometimes just great things happen, but they might have originated from somebody, but you can't exactly put your finger on how that all worked. I just felt as a business owner, it'd be fun to enjoy the benefit of just wonderful, cool things happening that are out of your control in a beautiful way. And so I would spend a lot of time thinking about what it would be like to own a business. And usually any ideas I had were like the 10,000 website of that idea. And then one day I was watching, actually, this was a very strange origin story, but there was a presidential debate in 2016 between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And there was this whole debate about who has done more for the manufacturing workers at work in America. And it was like a little kerfuffle. And there were also just like numbers being thrown out, like big numbers of people, like 5 million, 10 million workers. And so my thought was, wait a minute, are there 10 million manufacturing workers without jobs right now? And so I spent a while researching that statistic. And yeah, since 2000, at that point, it was like 10 years from now. So in 2016, there have been somewhere between 5 and 10 or maybe 15 million manufacturing workers in America who had lost their job. But it wasn't for one reason. It was like a host of reasons and all kinds of different changes just in manufacturing. And so then I thought, wow, that is a lot of people. And I thought, okay, who's helping them? Because here we are in America and we're all capitalists and we believe in boom bust and we believe in people getting lucky, people getting unlucky, but everyone kind of has a regeneration story or whatever. And I thought there must just be like tons of companies that are supporting these kinds of workers, and I thought, oh, well, who has the Yahoo of career change? There must be someone like that who's just helping people whose career has gone away. And I couldn't find anything. And then I was thinking to myself, oh, I'm using the wrong search terms. And then finally, I just decided if I can't find it, it's either not there or it's just not able to get out in the world. And I was like obsessed with this. Like I was having dreams about it. And I was like, this is wrong. And I think part of that had been that I just switched careers a bunch of times and it doesn't scare me. And so I just felt like there should just be a way to help people who are at a crossroads who need help. And one of my insights was that the last people you should speak to when you're at a crossroads are your family and friends, because they don't have good advice. They just are talking to you about their own fears. And so what you need is almost like a professional cheerleader who can help you see the forest for the trees and really like dive into what would make your heart sing. To me, that's like the ultimate for everyone, really. And so I thought, okay, cool. I'll create the Yahoo career change. And it was going to be, it's called Next Chapter. And it was going to be a community and it was going to be like kumbaya and really affordable. And we'd help each other. And I love the idea. But one of the trouble that I had was I'm not a coach. I don't really have a platform. People don't know me as like a helper of people. So it wasn't like I could like let everyone know on LinkedIn and have 100,000 signups the next day. And so I was trying to come up with features that would make it more attractive to people. And we had different groups that we were reaching out to: stay-at-home moms returning to the workforce, decommissioning military, and then manufacturing workers who had to possibly switch careers. And so I thought, gosh, really these job switches need is a good coach. And for a split second, I thought maybe I become a coach. I realized that no, I'm not interested in the one-on-one. I want to do the scaffolding. I want to come up with a larger kind of scalable solution. And I reached out to a coach I knew and I said, listen, what if we set up a Zoom and we invite 10 moms and they don't have to leave their house and their kid can be asleep and they can just split your rate by 10 and you just tell me whatever your rate is. And then it's affordable to the moms. You don't have to go anywhere. It's like a job. And the coach said, oh, I would do that in a heartbeat. Not only do people need coaches, but coaches need leads.
Yeah.
And so then I said, oh, what if this whole thing is just a marketplace? Because I was like drowning in the content anyway. Like I had to figure out what would be good. And so I thought, this is great because then the coaches can bring their content they've been working on and their specialties. And I'll just be a matchmaker like I have in the past. And so that's how it all started. And then once I figured that out, I got really excited about it. And we have pivoted to B. So now we're marketing to employers because they have professional development budgets. But today, I still do hope that we can get to individuals. And right now, it's like the idea is cohorts of colleagues learning together. But maybe it could also just be cohorts of people in a similar role. And it's more on their own time as opposed to company time. And it's really meant to just really help three different stakeholders. It's meant to help coaches like work, but according to what they feel like their time is worth, which is different from a lot of coaching organizations. And then helping employers with opt-in, very relevant coaching and different subjects for their employees. And that helps with retention and turnover. And then for the employees, everyone wants to be supported in professional growth. And so everyone gets something out of it and all get a fair price. The mathy things about this is, let's say, if I'm a coach, my rate is $300 an hour. As an employer, I could bring 3 people to that group coaching session, or I could bring 40. And it's like the cost per person changes dramatically with how many people you have, but the hourly rate of the coach doesn't ever change because they're telling you what it is. So it becomes a math game of it can be just a lot more affordable if you have more people in the room.
It's very cool. You noticed that statistic that stood out to you and that really just triggered this trickle effect of, okay, I don't agree with this. I want to do something about it. And yet it's something that most other people might not notice. And it really comes down to recognizing where there's a hole in the market, right? Like when it comes to figuring out what kind of service you want to provide for people, it needs to utilize your strengths and something you're passionate about, but also how can you think outside of the box a little bit and how can you fill a need that's not being filled by anybody yet? And so I just think that's so cool that you recognize that and that you went after it and that you created your own unique way of tackling it.
Yeah. And I think that's really like open to everyone. And I think one of the weird things about like life is sometimes it's really hard to know what your talents are because they're so obvious to you. And I think that's like a cool part about just like being a human and trying to find what those things are where you can help people or you see it and that other people don't see it. Like you're right. Like I'm sure obviously millions of people also watch that debate and they didn't have the same question. And I think really a lot of it just stems from I've never been afraid of switching jobs. And often that like scares people in my family because they're like, what are you talking about? That is a terrible idea. And I said, I'm going to do it anyway. And I think, and I just, that for me is like a superpower. And you have to always like lean, I think, on your superpowers. And then you're able to find opportunities.
So, how do you suggest people uncover those talents or start recognizing what they're really good at?
Yeah,
Any
it's a very,
advice?
very good question. I think the shortest way to do it is to say, when you say to yourself, that's wrong. And if other people aren't also saying that's wrong, then that might be your superpower. If something happening in the news and like the whole country is outraged by it, okay, you're probably not in the minority. Like that's your superpower. But if you see something happening, you're like, that is wrong. That should not be that way. And everyone else is not like agreeing with you. Like you're seeing something that is like really core to who you are and so foundational to like how you see the world. So that's something that I would say. And that really surprised me because I was never like a big entrepreneurial person. I had been just because, again, I think things should be done a certain way. Like I want to do it the way I want to do it. And so that also is helpful. If you have strong opinion, it always seemed really scary to me to start a business. But I think that if you really believe in something strongly and it's not just like, it's not a gimmick. You're not like, oh, let's do nail polish for dogs. That'd be so fun. But like you really believe like dogs should be wearing nail polish. This is wrong. You know what I mean? Like you like
Yeah.
really believe in your soul, and then you should do that. And I think that kind of passion propels you during hard times. And also it means that it's something that you have a value system that aligns with this business, which I think is really valuable when the tough times happen.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's interesting that you say, oh, if I notice something that I think is wrong going on in the world, how can I help make it better or fix it or whatever? And that it comes from your values deep within. And you use the word passion. And I know there's this whole wave of people that don't find a job because you're passionate about it. That's not the way to do things. But I do really think that the word passion and purpose really go
Mm.
hand in hand. And so when I hear people say, look for a career that makes you feel a sense of purpose, because that's what we're all looking for essentially, is to feel purposeful in life, like we're making an impact somehow. I think that really goes hand in hand with being passionate about something that is
Yeah.
purposeful from your value.
And what I would add on to that is I think that you probably don't want to have a job that's aligned with your hobby. Like that, I could see like that being advice where someone's listening, like you like skateboarding, good for you. That's hard to make a career out of that unless again, you feel like there's some things should be happening in the skateboarder world. Maybe everyone should be wearing like chin straps or ear pads or something that really should be happening there people are not doing. But I could see the hobby, the passion advice saying, be careful about trying to turn a passion into a job. But I think if you see the solution, that's like a different thing than just like wanting to work in this. Like, for instance, actually, here's a great example. I got out of college, I worked in fashion because I thought it would tie to, I'd studied political science in college and then visual arts. And I thought that was like a nice combination of the two. But like, that's probably a good suggestion. I think fashion is, there's so much more going on than just the making of clothes. There's a whole culture and this and that. And so I think that what it's like the purpose and the passion, but it's a solution. I think it's really about seeing solutions, caring about solutions, and ultimately because it's what you always hear is what's able to convince people to get involved or fund or buy from you is passion.
Yeah.
The more that you care about it, the more that you can convince people with just like almost the energy that you have about the problem.
No, I love that. It makes me think of sales in general and like how, for instance, if you're selling a product like Mary Kay or something, and you have to use the product and believe in it in order to truly sell people on this is the best solution for you for this, because I have a testimony of it being the greatest thing ever, right? To solve the problem.
But I think everyone might be driven by different things. But I think for me, I'm always just much more engaged about what is like a problem or what is the solution to a problem. And another thing I would just say about having done all this is it actually created, what's the word, like a long journey for me, because it was almost like I had a problem in mind and I had to find a business solution for it. And that's a whole other thing that I would say. That's the downside of that, is that it just took me a while to figure out, like, what is this business? What am I doing? That's why I'm saying, like, the epiphany about it being a marketplace, like, that took a little while to come up with and through a bunch of conversations. Whereas sometimes if someone has a business idea, again, the paint dog's toenails, that might just be like a spark you have and you go out and you make nail polish. Maybe it's not so hard. So that's the one issue when you lead with deep value, is it might be harder to actually have the solution.
Yeah, which makes me think of playing to your strengths, and you might have the idea, but you don't have the business side of things. Like you don't know as much about that side of things. So collaborating with somebody or bringing someone in, like you brought coach in because you knew that coaching wasn't going to be your thing. Can you maybe talk a little bit about your community that you've built or your support system that you've built along the way in order to navigate things that come up that you're like, oh, I don't really know how to do that part, but I'm going to lean on these other people?
I just had an epiphany the other day that whenever I'm at a plateau in my business, that I'm able to solve it by speaking to more people and just explain to them the problem. And I think, oh, I'll plow through it and I'll just solve it and I'll just come up with some solution. But really, it's advice from other people or talking to an expert or getting a new perspective on it. Just for lately, I started to join a bunch of these networking groups. And it's been really valuable because one of the problems with my business and marketing is, I think that the real pain point that drives people to talk to us is turnover, either preventing turnover or increasing retention. And so if you have a turnover problem, that's not something you're going to be talking to everyone about. You're going to be talking to a few trusted advisors. So I'm just trying to speak to more people in the CFO and accounting space, and really people who are trusted advisors to business owners. And I think that it never can go wrong. It can only help you to connect with more people for more advice. The one thing I'd say, of course, is it always helps to talk to someone who's an expert as opposed to a family member who think they know something, but they're just chatting with you. I had so many experiences where family members just haven't been productive. And I love my family, but it's just, they're not CFOs or they're not whatever. I can get lulled into thinking friends and family have great advice when they just don't really know much about it. And so that's why I find these networking groups really helpful, because you can really like test theories that you have and get feedback and get introductions. So that's one of these things with these group networking of things, is that I'm just able to meet so many more interesting people and just a much wider variety. And it's a little bit like speed dating. You end up meeting a lot of people, and not everyone's for you, but it's always interesting to meet people, and it's way better than it would have been if you hadn't done it. And like expanding my range to find people.
Yeah, this idea of choosing who you're listening to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and family is not always the best go-to, but maybe they're good for something else, right? Reminding you of what makes you great. Or like in the times where you're like, I don't really know what I'm doing and if I'm talented or not. Maybe that's what those people are for. But when it comes to the business side of it, finding those people that are doing what you need to learn more about, right?
Yeah. I think friends and family are so good for just like having a bad day and just talking about what's going on and someone feeling your pain and being on your side, no matter what. That, to me, what's so valuable about having close friendships and close family members. And I guess what I'm just saying is, like, when there's like a tough decision, I think it's just valuable to get feedback from people that aren't emotionally tied the same way. I guess that's my point. I love my family and friends. It's more just, I just feel like once in a blue moon, I've gotten like weird advice. And I have to always remember, like, that's not their job. Like,
Give some advice on how to find those people, like, or those networks that you join.
yeah. Well, what I'll say is, I think one of the things I've really learned is, like, listen to every bit of feedback, because there's always like a nugget of truth. And they may not be 100% right, but it's going to be better than what it was yesterday if you take a little the advice. And this is so random, but I had a networking call with a guy who helps with our LinkedIn. And I was thinking maybe I can connect him with somebody else. I don't really need this. And then he said to me, it's just, by the way, your LinkedIn banner is really bad. And I was a little bit like offended, but then I thought, it's a business. And then I spent like a few minutes on ChatGPT. What do you recommend? And he told me the guy had earlier said a few things that he recommended just about almost help people. Well, had kind of his main point, which I think about a lot now, actually, is nobody cares what I think. They care how you're going to help them. And that was his point too. Nobody really knows what your banner means. And I thought it was so clever. It was like my website, and it's like a glimpse into my website. It's like maybe artistic. I didn't even think it was that artistic, but maybe it was. But his point was, no, tell people in English words what your business is about. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I followed through with that on ChatGPT. And there's actually a lot ChatGPT can help you with. Like you can say, this is my title on LinkedIn, ChatGPT. Please critique it and suggest a better one based on my LinkedIn profile or based on my website or whatever you want to base it off of. But that was like a funny insight to me because I went to the call thinking this guy is not for me. And actually, that was like a nice bit of information. The one I've been working is like and you pay a fee and an annual fee. There's a calendar, and you can just choose different groups that are run by different people. And I'm in the B2B one, meaning everyone in the B2B is looking for connections, marketing to businesses. And then there's a B2C one, which is more marketing to individuals. I think that's a really smart delineation because such different business models. But after I started doing that, I got pulled into all these other ones, throw lots and lots. I don't know if I'll be doing this in 5 years, doing all these networking, but who knows? You only have to commit for a year and then you can decide if it didn't work for you after a year. Networking things are just an incredible way to expand your reach and just meet all kinds of different people. And as you're really specific about what you think you need, people can also react to you. I can say, I really like to meet CFOs because they are really like paying attention to turnover and they know the cost of turnover. And then someone could say to me, oh, I really agree with you. Your thesis is also what I think. Or someone could say, oh, I disagree with you. I actually think X would be better. And that's really valuable to know too, because then it's feedback about what you think, who you think your people are, your tribe. And that feedback is just so valuable.
Yeah, definitely. When we were talking a little bit earlier, it's just so valuable to have that third party outside somebody to bounce ideas off of, because then you come up with things or you learn things that you never even thought of, right? Especially on your own, right? In your own office by yourself thinking, oh, this is what I need. These are the people I need to talk to. And then come to find out maybe that's not quite it. And yeah, just having that ability to reach out, that network of people that are willing and able to support you and help you along the way, just going to help expand your horizons, I think.
Yeah. And one of the coaches on our platform, he's super cool. His name is Dr. Stephen Long. And he basically wrote his dissertation about how to teach humans outperformance. It's actually funny, like his background, he'd been a college football player and then a college football coach. And he said there are always a few kids who like went so much further than you ever would have thought. And so basically he wrote a whole dissertation within like organizational psychology about what is outperformance in humans. Like, how do you teach it? Like, how do you evaluate it? And an example is like Tom Brady. He wasn't like a football wonderkind as a ninth grader, but then he's become one of the greatest of all time. And so what is he doing that's different from other people who had so much talent in ninth grade, but didn't become Tom Brady? Right. And I think so much is just endlessly looking to improve. And that's why the feedback is really valuable, is because you're constantly testing what you think is the right thing to do. And the more that you can be open to change based on feedback, the better you get.
Yeah, it brings up the idea that I pondered recently about failing more often, like making it a goal to fail so that you can be more resilient Like
Oh,
more resilient than most people are when they
yeah.
think, right?
Yeah.
Because the more you practice, the better you get at recovering from it. And so this idea of getting the feedback more often and faster is going to help you refine your skills quicker and take you further than maybe the average person.
Yeah, and I'll also say that one of the problems with feedback is there's always going to be the moment where you're like, that bruises my ego. That does not feel good. And you have to say, okay, you know what? Let's just take the ego out of it. If I listen to this feedback, it just means that I will be better. And
Mhm.
I'm just going to roll with that.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first started working with him, he has this whole test. When I took this whole test, you could take this test and then you periodically take the test to see if you were like learning the key components to become. And so he gave me the test and he's okay, well, you got a 9. And I was like, cool. Is it like closest to 1? He said, no, it's out of 100. And it was like really hard. I was like, wow, like I'm really not outperforming. But you have to just sit with that sucks. I wish I weren't in this position right now, but I'm just gonna have to roll with it and get better. And I think the more that you can have experiences like that where you realize it's a blow to the ego, but ultimately it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. I think especially if I personally perfectionist tendencies, type A, try to control everything. You think you are excelling most of the time, right? And then you get this little actually, like you said, oh, I'm a 9 out of 100. Whoa, like rocks your world. That ego hit, being able to take it and know that it's not the end of the world, right? Like you have to process the emotions that come with it, but on the other side of it, that improvement, because you are somebody typically that wants to be better, like then that's going to come over time as long as you keep applying yourself to.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that his research really showed is that people that were really tied to their current state were the people who were always like plateauing. They weren't able to grow because they're really tied to being whatever that thing was. Whoever was the best ninth grader in football who just never became Tom Brady, that person was probably really tied to being really good at their job. But the people who are listening to the feedback and trying to get better and trying to keep better tomorrow, those are the people that end up being the best players. They're like fragile egos, all this stuff. It's from people who just don't want to hear it. They want to hold on really tightly to their vision of themselves as something,
Yeah.
as opposed to just letting them be an evolving person or assume that they admit they don't know everything or whatever.
Yeah. The growth mindset versus fixed mindset
Yeah,
concept.
100%. It's 100% that. And I think even like some of his examples were like, it's even more than like the growth mindset, but it's making someone miserable, but then saying, okay, I'm ready for more. Tell me more. Okay. What was that? How would you grade that? What can I do to improve? And seeing improvement as like a competitive sport almost, as opposed to protecting your ego from feedback.
I love that. I mean, I don't love that, but like to cognitively try and understand that and be like, okay, what do I do naturally? And am I getting any better at being like, okay, bring it on. Like, what's next? Even though I just went through something really hard.
Yeah.
And
And I think the key is just saying it's almost like you have to see two silos. One silo is you can feel hurt, but the other is, oh, but I'm learning something that will make me better. And just being okay with it. It's not like one or the other. It's okay to have both because I think we are human beings. Everyone has feelings, and you never know the way someone says something could touch you in a way that has nothing to do with what they said, but somehow remind you of something in your past. And I think that everything gets so complicated because our heads are always running that you have, and they create any number of million things that are like misinterpreting what the person said. But I think more that you can push aside the ego stuff and just go with the improvement. And it also just makes life more interesting, trying to improve. I also add. Because if everything, then what? What are you going to do?
that's boring.
Yeah.
Yeah. The concept of having two seemingly opposing emotions or thought at the same time or experience it being like, this is a really hard change for me right now, but I can also see the growth and the opportunities that are going to come from it. And those allowing those two things to exist at the same time and not having to say, oh, it's only one or it's only the other. is just a concept that I've been really working on cultivating for the past few years, especially when I'm like in the midst of it, right? And recognizing that we as human beings are so complex that it is often more nuanced than one or the other. It can, lots of feelings, lots of emotions can exist out in once, and it's perfectly okay. And yeah, navigating that has just been interesting.
Yeah. Or even I remember when I got that 9 and I just remember thinking, this is gonna be a tough day. I'm just gonna have to sleep on it and I'll think about this again tomorrow. But it's just it sucks. It sucks like getting such a poor grade. Everyone, what are you gonna do? You have to sit with it a little bit. And so I think about that a lot. And I think that's your point of failing a lot. It's funny because the whole idea of failing a lot always kills me because people love to talk about it, but it always like failing. But I remember I one time had a trainer working with me. Oh yeah, we're just trying to the key is just to go towards failure. And I was like, you should not whatever these are, drift or whatever. Yeah, right. And I was so offended by that. And even now I hear you, I'm like, oh God, yeah. But I think it's just like pushing yourself until you don't know the answers and then just taking a stab and seeing if that works and then seeing what happens next. I also think, look at you, like there's one day in your life you didn't know how to put on a podcast, right? But now you do. And now I bet you're really good at it. And you figured out all the ways and you have lots of systems and processes. But look at where you are now versus a year ago or 5 years ago and like how much has changed.
Yeah. Why do we keep going when the going gets tough?
Yeah.
Like, what is it that in certain situations you're like, yeah, never mind, I don't want to do more, it's too hard. And in what other situations do you keep going? Like when I'm creating this podcast and it's hard and it's taking a lot of time and it's not really quite what I thought it was going to be. Now I'm here a year later and I'm like, got this. It's just interesting to consider, right?
That I bring us back a little bit to the beginning of the conversation because I do think that there's supposed to be some value that you have in there where you're like, I really want people to hear this. So it's worth it for you, whatever the thing is, whatever is worth it for you to go through the tough time. And I think that's my point of this too. It's weird because it's so like foundational to me about like the career change thing that like I don't think about it every day. But some days I'm like, oh, why am I doing it? I'm hitting my head against the wall. But then I realized I'm like, you know what? I really want to help people with this. And I think it can never steer you wrong if you just believe strongly about something. But it may be a few layers below what seems the obvious thing. The value of what I'm keep working on is like not really in the marketing line. You know what I mean? It's a little bit different. So
Yeah.
I guess a tricky part.
What do you think it is that has gotten you to this point where career change is like no big deal?
Oh, great question. I don't know where that's from. What is it? I think I actually think that it is. It's like an intellectual thing. I think I get a little bit bored. And I think that if I were ever had a job where it's the kind of job where they're like, okay, cool. Like he did this for 2 years. Like now go over here and learn this totally different thing. Like I would probably be at that job for 20 years. You know what I mean? It's like interesting and keeps you like busy. I think that might be part of it because I'm such an extrovert. I get a kick out of trying to convince somebody about this idea I have, which is why I'd be great in this thing. I realized that after a few conversations, people, I should just introduce you to so, and that person, I should introduce you to so. And it turns out it's not really that hard because you just have to convince 3 people to like make introductions. I think it probably does come down to like chatting with people, but I also don't where I think there's also a difference in because I'm so relationship driven. If I were a more like numbers person, I would probably focus on losing income or dollars and be really worried about, oh, if I switch careers, like how much money am I losing? That doesn't really occur to me because I'm much more so, I'm like fulfilled with like relationships and humans. I do sometimes but against people like my husband who he's just very numbers oriented. But for him, oh, why would you do that if you like lose $10? And you're like, yeah, but you're not losing $10. You're opening a whole new line of opportunity or whatever the thing. I always see it as like possibility and a new friendship. And I just feel like I try not to sweat the small stuff. And I think that really depends on the brain of the person and like how they view change.
How do you view change? Is it scary and impossible? It's going to cost you all these things, Or is it exciting and you're looking forward to what's next?
Although I will say I do get myself in trouble because I'm so optimistic that I'll oftentimes agree to do things. And then I get to the thing and I'm like, oh my God, why did I do this?
Yeah.
And so that's the downside a little bit of my sort of optimistic like persona or whatever you call it, personality. Like I've had it so many times where I'll get to some networking event, like in person, and I'll know zero people. I'm like, why did I come to this? Why did I agree to do this? And so I think everyone has very different pitfalls to the way they deal with change or opportunities.
Yeah. And one thing that keeps coming up for me is to be able to recognize like where your strengths lie and where they don't lie. And so if you're saying yes to all these things and then you like get there, like, what am I doing with why am I doing this? Like maybe, okay, I'm going to start being a little more intentional about what I like, just
Exactly.
recognizing the things that come up along the way of, okay, I'm going to pivot just a little bit this way because I want to spend my time doing more of that versus this.
Yeah. Or even just recently, again, with all these like networking things, I was realizing that I was taking these notes. I was being really present in these like conversations, but I wasn't really keeping like a CRM or tracking.
Mhm.
And so then I've been putting a lot of time into my schedule, just like quiet time. Make sure these people go into a CRM and you're trying to make introductions for them and really track what you're doing so that ultimately you can processize it a little bit. For instance, if I meet a new kind of person and I know that three other people who I've met is looking for that kind of person, I can make that intro and it's super organized. And I think that's also one of my weaknesses is a little bit shiny ball syndrome is like then taking the time to close the loop and do the follow up and get organized. And so that's just like my cross to bear.
What am I learning along the way? Oh, I'm learning this about myself. I should probably work on that. Or I want to focus on being better at that thing.
Yeah. And I think that was mostly me who does TerraWatt. But if it were a big organization, I would certainly hire a lot of people that are really process oriented who would help me make sure that things got completed or that there was a process or whatever. And so that's just like people talk about that all the time. But I think that's really interesting to think about the complementary nature of people that you work with and just finding people where you make a really strong whole. WHOL, not HOLE.
Yeah, the collaboration piece and finding the people that are really good at the one thing that maybe you're not as good at, but you're really good at this thing that they're not good at. And then
Right.
creating that
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that's also part of the feedback stuff, right? Because it always will make you better if there are people that do something well that you don't do well, but you have to recognize that's valuable to do. But yeah, what are most of your listeners? What kind of things are they looking for from your podcast?
I want it to be inspirational. Oh, if they did that, I can make a change. But I also think that they're looking for like actionable tips. Okay, what's one thing that I could do today that might move the needle to me figuring out what my next career move is going to be?
Yeah, that's so interesting. Okay. One thing that I'm obsessed with are these personality assessments, and there are 1,000 of them out there. But it's like Enneagram, Myers Briggs, which I took, is like a little bit food these days. But I do think all of them, any one you could find is probably really valuable. There's like skills, strengths, and there's a million of them. And I
Mhm.
do think that that is an incredible first step for anyone who is trying to make change because you learn things about yourself you either like knew like unconsciously or things maybe you didn't even know at all. And it just really helps you like position yourself from a position of strength because a lot of like I said earlier, a lot of times people don't know what makes them great or what they have as a superpower. And that means once that's your superpower and that's unusual in some way, some combination, then you can talk to other people about it. If you didn't know that, you can't help position yourself for other people to see how great you are. And I think that for me, that was like one of the biggest pivot in my life is really understanding the extrovert stuff.
Yeah. I love that because I don't know if you're familiar with human design, but I did my human design reading last year before I started this whole podcasting journey. And there were some things about it that, like, oh, this is like using your voice is how you like reach people or whatever. And I was like, okay. I didn't feel very confident in using my voice. And I knew going into podcasting that I was like, okay, I'm practicing. I'm like, I'm going to work on this and get more confident and position myself in a way that I know what I'm talking about. And I'm more comfortable presenting myself in a certain way and sharing my thoughts. And yeah, that confidence boost that it gives you to be like, oh yeah, I am. I guess I can be more that way.
What you're thinking, let people know about. I do have to say that I think as a woman, there's also this component of being the good girl or not making waves or something about that. And I think in every aspect, at least in the US, there's some component, all of us of women have that. And I think what I started to learn is people are actually like interested in people's perspective. And even if it's like a little bit off topic or whatever, it's like, it's actually more interesting than not when people share more. And I think it helps the person too realize they have a lot to say. It will help the conversation. It will help someone else like more about their lives. And the more that we can all just talk about what we're thinking and what's going on and our examples and thoughts, whatever, I just think that helps.
Yeah. It helps people feel like they're not alone because we don't think that we're going to be accepted or that we're not going to belong anymore if we say something that someone doesn't agree with. But it's important to share new ideas because it opens up your mind to things you would have never thought about on your own. And so even if you might not initially agree, at least now you're like, huh, okay.
And invite connection. That was actually a funny thing that happened one time when I was doing this like outperformance coaching with the guy who's on my platform is I'm like almost never speak up on like webinars and stuff. And I was saying to him how for the first time ever, like I spoke up on a webinar and he's, oh, because you were confident and you knew you had information to share. And I was like, yeah. And there's something about where I was like, oh, I'm telling you, I know something that would help you. And it just popped right out of my mouth. Whereas in the past, I would have probably just sat there and been like, oh, they probably already know this. But no one was saying it. You get an opportunity to do it. And I think it also invites connection. That's the other thing. Like the more that you share, the more that people like know who you are and like that they'd like to know more about you.
For sure. I've really enjoyed our conversation. If anybody wants to learn more about TerraWatt, how can they find you?
So TerraWatt, just the website, I will always respond to any email sent via the website. My most active social media is LinkedIn. And it's Francie Jain on LinkedIn and it's TerraWatt groups on LinkedIn. I'd love to talk about ROI and all sorts of mathematical concepts with coaching. But yeah, I would love to connect with anyone who's interested. And I'm very open book and chatty. So feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for being here. It's been a pleasure. And I hope you enjoy your weekend. Thanks for tuning in to the Shift Your Day Job podcast. If you've loved this episode, leave a review. It helps more women find the show. Feeling stuck in your career? Let's connect. Follow me on social media at Shift Your Day Job or email me at shiftyourdayjob@gmail.com. Until next time, I'm Brittany Cates. Let's shift your day job together.